To the woman who's finally leaving our lives, my son's cheerful toast cut through the air like glass shattering. Laughter erupted around the table, but all I could feel was a deep, suffocating ache in my chest. I forced a smile, trying to join in, but inside, I cringed. How did it come to this? The warmth of the celebration faded as I sat there, a stranger among my own family. I had spent years pouring my heart into this family, crafting memories, nurturing bonds, and yet here I was, the punchline to a cruel joke. The laughter echoed in my ears, each chuckle a reminder of my growing insignificance. I glanced around the table, searching for a familiar face, a hint of understanding or compassion, but everyone seemed caught up in the moment, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. My daughter chatted animatedly with her friends, her phone buzzing with messages she deemed more important than our time together. My heart sank further. In that instant, I felt the weight of my solitude. It wasn't just the toast, it was the culmination of years of feeling overlooked, dismissed, erased. How had I become invisible to the very people I had dedicated my life to? Tears threatened to spill, but I swallowed them down. I refused to let them see my pain. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was still here, still worthy of love, still capable of being heard. But as I sat at that table, the laughter ringing in my ears, I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps I was already leaving, not just in body, but in spirit. Every morning, the sun would peek through the curtains, casting a soft glow across my modest kitchen. I cherished this time, my sanctuary. The familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the scent of the blueberry muffins I had baked the night before. I'd pour a cup, savoring the warmth as I leaned against the counter, taking a moment to breathe. This was my ritual, and in those quiet moments, I felt a sense of purpose. As the caretaker of our home, I took pride in the little things. I'd set the table for breakfast, arranging the plates just so, making sure everyone had their favorite mug. My son preferred his coffee black, while my daughter liked hers sweetened with just a hint of cream. These small gestures were my way of showing love, of nurturing my family. I thought they saw me, appreciated me. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to feel a growing distance. Family traditions were something I held dear. Each Sunday, I would gather everyone for dinner, a time to reconnect amidst the chaos of our busy lives. I'd spend hours preparing, cooking their favorite meals, and setting the table with fresh flowers. But lately, the dinners felt more like obligations than celebrations. I would watch as my children rushed through the meal, their eyes glued to their phones, distracted by the world outside our home. Just one more thing to check, they'd say, often without looking up. I felt a pang of disappointment, but I masked it with a smile, convincing myself they were just busy. Birthdays used to be special occasions filled with laughter and love. I would plan elaborate celebrations, complete with homemade cakes and decorations. But as I stood in the kitchen this past year, preparing for my own birthday, a sense of dread crept in. I wondered if they would remember, or if it would simply slip past like any other day. When the day arrived, I felt a flutter of excitement, hoping for a moment of connection. Instead, I was met with hurried messages and last-minute arrangements. The family party I had envisioned turned into a brief gathering, punctuated by polite smiles and polite conversations. I began to notice subtle signs of neglect in my daily interactions. My daughter would nod along as I spoke, her eyes focused on her phone rather than on me. It stung, that lack of engagement. My son would come by for quick visits, often on his way to somewhere else, leaving me feeling like a stop on his route rather than a destination. I felt like a ghost in my own home, drifting from room to room, my presence barely acknowledged. Amidst the laughter of my grandchildren playing in the living room, I often found myself on the sidelines, watching from a distance. Their joy was palpable, their laughter filled the air like music, but I felt like an audience member, longing to be part of the performance. I clapped and cheered, but deep down, I yearned for a moment to be included, to share in their excitement. I missed the days when they would run to me for a hug or a story, seeking my presence and comfort. In the quiet moments, I couldn't help but reflect on my feelings of invisibility. Had I become too demanding? I questioned myself incessantly. Perhaps I had asked for too much attention, too much love. Did my desire for connection come across as desperation? I replayed conversations in my mind, searching for clues that might explain their distance. I longed for reassurance, for someone to acknowledge my feelings, to tell me that I still mattered. As I poured another cup of coffee, I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease that settled in my chest. I reminded myself that I had given my family everything I could. I had loved them fiercely, sacrificed my own needs for theirs. But the gnawing doubt lingered. Was it too much to hope for a little recognition, a bit of warmth in return? I felt caught in a cycle of yearning and disappointment, and each day seemed to blur into the next, leaving me feeling more lost than ever. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself questioning the very essence of my role in this family. I had nurtured and cared for them, but why did it feel like I was fading away? Each moment of joy I tried to capture felt overshadowed by a growing sense of exclusion. I longed for a reminder that I was still here, still worthy of love and attention. And yet, each passing day made that truth feel more fragile, like a delicate thread ready to snap. The tension in the air was palpable as my son casually mentioned my will during dinner, a topic I had hoped to avoid. You know, Mom, he said, leaning back in his chair, you really should think about what happens to everything after you're gone. It's time to start dividing things up. His tone was light, as if he were discussing the weather, but my heart plummeted. Dividing things up? I echoed, trying to keep my voice steady. What do you mean? He shrugged, as if it were an insignificant matter. You have so much stuff, and it's just sitting here. It makes sense to figure out who gets what. My daughter nodded in agreement, her eyes flicking back to her phone, clearly more interested in her social media than our family discussion. The sting of betrayal pierced through me. How could they talk about my belongings as if they were mere items on a list? These weren't just possessions, they were memories, pieces of a life I had built with love and care. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. I think it's important to discuss my wishes first, I said softly, but even I could hear the tremor in my voice. Oh, come on, Mom, my son replied, waving his hand dismissively. You're not going anywhere anytime soon. We're just being practical. Practical. The word echoed in my mind like a haunting refrain. My heart sank further as I realized that my voice, my wishes, were being dismissed without a second thought. I had spent years ensuring that our family stayed connected, yet here they were, discussing my life's belongings as if I were already gone. That feeling of invisibility crept back in, wrapping around me like a shroud. I glanced at my daughter, hoping to find some empathy in her expression, but she was still absorbed in her phone. Mom, you really need to let us take care of this, she said without looking up. It's better for everyone if we handle it ourselves. Her words hit me like a slap. It was as if she had stripped away my autonomy, telling me that my input didn't matter. I felt small, diminished. I had raised her to value family, to appreciate the love we shared, yet here she was, reinforcing the very neglect I had feared. That evening, I retreated to my room, my heart heavy. I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling the weight of their words pressing down on me. I had always been the one to keep our family close, to ensure we honored one another, but now I felt like a relic, an obstacle in their path. As I looked around my room, I caught sight of a box tucked away in the corner. Curiosity nudged me to open it. Inside were family photos and letters, remnants of a life filled with love. As I sifted through the memories, I discovered a letter from my late husband, written long before his passing. The familiar handwriting stirred something deep within me. My dearest Jessica, it began, you are my heart, my anchor in this chaotic world. Never forget how much you are loved. The words washed over me like a soothing balm, reminding me of the respect and love we had shared. Tears filled my eyes as I read on, remembering the laughter, the shared dreams, and the promises we had made to each other. In that moment, I felt a flicker of strength ignite within me. My husband had always believed in the importance of family, but he also valued individual voices. I realized that my children had lost sight of that truth. They were so focused on dividing my belongings that they had forgotten the love and connection that made those possessions meaningful. With renewed determination, I began to confront the emotional neglect I had been feeling. I thought of all the times I had poured my heart into family gatherings, only to see them treated as mere obligations. I had sacrificed my own needs for theirs, always putting their happiness first. Yet, it seemed my efforts had gone unnoticed, overshadowed by their busy lives and distractions. As the days went by, I found myself replaying conversations in my mind, dissecting each interaction for signs of the lack of respect I felt. The dismissive comments, the hurried visits, the casual ways they brushed aside my feelings, it all came rushing back like a tidal wave. I felt overwhelmed, caught in a cycle of hurt and confusion. One afternoon, as I was dusting the shelves in the living room, I overheard my children discussing their plans for the future. "I can't wait to get my hands on that vintage lamp," my son said, his tone eager. "Mom doesn't need it anymore." My heart sank. Was that all they saw me as? A means to an end? I felt that familiar sting of betrayal again, but this time it ignited a fire within me. I decided it was time to reclaim my voice, to assert my wishes, and remind them that I was still here, still deserving of respect. I may have felt invisible, but I would not fade away without a fight. Gathering my courage, I invited them over for a family meeting. I wanted to lay everything on the table, to express how their words and actions had affected me. I prepared myself, going over my thoughts repeatedly, reminding myself that I had the right to be heard. As they settled into their seats, I took a deep breath. "I want to talk about the will and what it means to me," I began, my voice steady. "It's not just about dividing my belongings. These things carry memories, a history that we've built together." My son shifted uncomfortably, and my daughter's eyes darted toward her phone again. But I pressed on. "I feel like my voice has been overlooked in this conversation. I want you both to understand that I am still here, and my wishes matter." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see their surprise, perhaps even a flicker of guilt. But I also sensed their discomfort. It was a moment of reckoning, a confrontation of the emotional neglect that had seeped into our family dynamics. As I spoke, I felt the weight of my years of sacrifice and love pouring out of me. I shared my feelings of being invisible, of how their dismissal had cut deep. I reminded them of the love we had shared, the respect that should always be a part of our family conversations. In that moment, I saw a shift in their expressions. My son's shoulders relaxed slightly, and my daughter put her phone down, focusing on me for the first time in what felt like ages. It was a flicker of hope, a chance to bridge the growing chasm between us. I concluded with a plea. "Let's honor our family's history together. I want us to approach this conversation with love and respect, just as we always have." As they nodded slowly, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It wouldn't be easy to change the dynamics we had fallen into, but at least I had taken the first step. I had reclaimed my voice, and in doing so, I hoped to remind them of the love and connection that had always bound us. The air was thick with laughter and the scent of grilled burgers as I stood in the backyard watching my family gather for a summer barbecue. It was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a time to celebrate being together. Yet an undercurrent of tension tugged at my heart. I felt like an outsider in my own home, the familiar ache of invisibility creeping back in. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over everything, I overheard my son chatting with his friends nearby. "Mom's finally going to downsize," he chuckled, a hint of mockery in his voice. "Time for her to move on to a retirement home or something." The laughter that followed stung like a sharp jab. My heart raced, and for a moment, I felt the world around me fade away. How casually he spoke of my life, my choices, as if they were nothing more than a punchline. I stood frozen, the spatula in my hand forgotten as I took in the scene, a sea of smiling faces that felt so far removed from my own reality. In that moment, clarity washed over me like a wave. I realized that I was still here, still a person deserving of respect and love. No longer could I allow their dismissive comments to dictate my worth. I had poured my heart into this family, sacrificing my own needs, but I was not just a caretaker or a punchline. I was Jessica, a woman with dreams, desires, and a voice that mattered. Slowly, I stepped away from the grill, the warmth of the flames reflecting the fire inside me. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the present moment. Instead of seeking revenge or lashing out, I found strength in recognizing my own worth. I was tired of feeling like a ghost, an afterthought in the lives of those I loved. As I approached the gathering, the laughter faded into a quiet murmur. I could feel their eyes on me, a mix of curiosity and surprise. I stood taller, my heart steadying as I prepared to speak. I may be leaving, I began, my voice firm yet calm, but I will not be forgotten. The words hung in the air, a quiet but powerful assertion of my identity. I could see my son's expression shift, confusion mingling with a hint of guilt. My daughter's eyes widened, the flicker of recognition sparking in her gaze. For the first time, I felt their attention, their acknowledgement of my presence. I spent so many years trying to create a loving home for this family, I continued, my voice steady. I put my heart into every meal, every holiday, every moment we've shared. But somewhere along the way, I lost my voice. I felt overlooked and dismissed, but I refused to let that define me any longer. There was a hush among the group, the conversations fading as they turned their full attention to me. I could feel the weight of my words settling into the spaces between us. I am not just the woman who raised you. I am a person with my own dreams, my own desires. I deserve to be heard, to be respected, just as you are. As I spoke, I felt the emotional control I had been seeking finally settle over me. I was not angry. I was simply reclaiming my place in this family. I wasn't looking for revenge or to punish them for their thoughtlessness. Instead, I was inviting them to remember the love that had built our family, the connections we shared that went beyond possessions and roles. I've made the decision to move, I said, my voice softer now, not because I'm leaving you behind, but because I want to find a space that reflects my independence and my worth. I want to embrace this next chapter of my life, and I hope you'll understand that it's not about you, it's about me. There was a pause, a moment of silence as they processed my words. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, the realization dawning that I was taking control of my life, that I was no longer willing to be a footnote in their stories. My son looked down for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. My daughter shifted in her seat, her expression softening. "Mom," she finally spoke, her voice tentative yet sincere. "I didn't realize, I thought we were just trying to help." I nodded, appreciating her effort to understand. "I know, sweetie, but it's important to me that you both see me as more than just your mother. I have my own life to lead, and I want you to know that I still have so much love to give, even as I step into this new chapter." As I looked around at my family, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The tension that had once defined our interactions began to dissipate. I saw the glimmers of understanding in their eyes, the flickers of recognition that perhaps they hadn't considered before. The atmosphere shifted, and I could sense my son's regret for his earlier remarks. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I guess I just thought, I know you care, but it's easy to forget how our words can affect others," I replied gently. "Let's work on that together." The barbecue resumed, but something fundamental had shifted. Laughter returned, but this time it felt different, more genuine, more inclusive. I felt a sense of belonging wash over me, the warmth of connection I had longed for. My son and daughter included me in their conversations, asking about my plans for the future, and for the first time in a long while, I felt engaged, seen. As the evening drew to a close, I stood by the grill, watching the last remnants of daylight fade into twilight. I could hear the sound of my grandchildren playing in the distance, their laughter echoing like music. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. I had reclaimed my emotional control without anger or bitterness. I was not leaving my family behind. I was stepping into my own life, embracing the person I had always been beneath the roles I had played. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, I felt a profound sense of peace settle within me. I was ready for this new chapter, ready to live fully and authentically, knowing that I would not be forgotten. I would carry the love of my family with me while also forging my own path forward. In reclaiming my voice, I had rediscovered my worth, and that realization would guide me into whatever lay ahead. It was a quiet afternoon when I sat down with my thoughts and a blank piece of paper, ready to rewrite my will. The sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on my dining room table, a space that had witnessed so many family gatherings, laughter, and love. But today, it felt different. Today, it was a blank canvas, a place where I would reclaim my voice and lay out my wishes for the future. As I began to write, I took my time, carefully considering each word. I wanted this document to reflect not just my possessions, but my heart and soul. I started by stating my desires clearly, who I wanted to inherit my cherished belongings, and more importantly, what each item represented. I thought of the vintage lamp my son had admired as a child, a symbol of creativity and warmth. I wanted him to have it, not just because it was his favorite, but because it reminded me of the nights we spent reading together in the soft glow of its light. I turned to other items, each with its own story. My grandmother's quilt, a tapestry of family history, would go to my daughter, a reminder of the love that had woven our family together for generations. I even included a few pieces of jewelry, each with a note explaining their significance. I wanted them to understand that these items were more than material possessions. They were tokens of our shared history, our memories, and the love that had always been at the core of our family. As I penned my final thoughts, I wrote about my hopes for their futures. I expressed my desire for them to remember the lessons of love and respect I had always tried to instill. I wanted them to carry those values into their own lives, to nurture their own families with the same care I had given them. It was liberating to articulate these wishes, to assert my feelings, and to recognize that I still had a voice in my life, even as I prepared for this next chapter. With the will completed, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was as if a burden had been lifted. I had taken control of my narrative, ensuring that my legacy would be one of love, not merely a list of belongings. I felt empowered, ready to embrace the changes ahead. A week later, I found myself packing up my belongings, preparing to move to a smaller, cozier apartment. The decision had been both exhilarating and daunting. I had lived in my family home for so long, filled with memories, laughter, and the echoes of my children's childhoods. But I knew that this move symbolized my independence, a fresh start. As I sorted through my possessions, I felt an unexpected lightness. I realized how much I had accumulated over the years, each item a token of the past, but also a weight that held me down. I began to let go of things that no longer served me, donating clothes I hadn't worn in years, and books that had once inspired me but now felt like clutter. I felt a sense of freedom in these choices, a release from the physical and emotional baggage I had carried for too long. On moving day, I stood in the empty rooms of my old home, taking a moment to say goodbye. I whispered a silent thank you for the years it had sheltered my family, the memories it had held. I moved forward with a heart full of gratitude, ready to step into my new life. The new apartment was a blank slate, filled with possibility. As I unloaded my boxes, I envisioned how I would arrange my furniture, where I would hang the photos that would soon adorn the walls. Each decision felt like an affirmation of my independence. I could create my own space, one that reflected my identity and dreams, without the weight of family expectations. In the weeks that followed, I embraced the solitude of my new apartment. At first, it felt strange, quiet, and empty, but soon I discovered the beauty of my own company. I took long walks in the nearby park, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. I found joy in simple pleasures, like sipping tea on my balcony while watching the world go by. I also began to reconnect with old friends, reaching out to those I had lost touch with over the years. I invited them over for tea and laughter, filling my home with voices that had once been a part of my life. Together, we reminisced about the past and shared stories of our lives. I felt a sense of belonging again, a reminder that connections could be rekindled, that it was never too late to forge meaningful relationships. I also discovered new hobbies that ignited my passion. I joined a local painting class, experimenting with colors and brushstrokes, allowing my creativity to flow freely. I had always loved to paint, but had set it aside for years, believing there was no time for such indulgences. Now, it felt like a release, a way to express myself without boundaries. In the evenings, I took up gardening on my balcony. I planted herbs and flowers, nurturing them as they grew. Watching them flourish brought me joy, a reminder of the beauty that comes from tending to something with love and care. I felt like I was nurturing a part of myself that had long been neglected, allowing it to bloom once again. As I settled into my new life, I felt a profound sense of liberation. I was no longer defined by my roles as a mother or caretaker. I was Jessica, a woman rediscovering herself. I cherished the solitude, finding strength in my independence while still holding on to the love of my family. I realized I could embrace both my individuality and my connections. I began to host small gatherings in my new apartment, inviting friends over for dinner and laughter. I took pride in preparing meals, enjoying the process of cooking and sharing stories around the table. Each gathering felt like a celebration of my newfound identity, a testament to the journey I had undertaken. As I looked around my cozy apartment, filled with laughter and warmth, I felt a deep sense of contentment. I had carved out a space that was entirely my own, one where I could thrive and grow. I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that I had the strength to navigate it on my own terms. In those moments of reflection, I realized that life is a series of chapters, each one leading us to new beginnings. I had closed the door on the past, but I carried the love and lessons with me, using them as a foundation for this next adventure. I was not just leaving behind a house, I was stepping into a new version of myself, one that was vibrant, filled with purpose, and deserving of love. And so, as I settled into my new life, I looked forward with hope and excitement. I had embraced change, chosen my own path, and discovered the true meaning of independence. I was ready to live fully and authentically, cherishing the connections I still held dear while nurturing the relationship I was building with myself.